So in a sense, until now, we just discussed about these movements of up and out, inside and down. All these movements are regulated by the pivot. But this is in a very general sense. Now there's a more, I consider it a more narrow sense of how the Shaoyang can affect the movement of Yang, and that is in relation to the ministerial fire. The Suman 66, we can find the following line. It says, the emperor fire uses clear light and ministerial fire uses position. Later on, it says, when Shaoyang is above, ministerial fire rules. So from the first line, we learned that there are two types of fire. There is emperor fire and there is ministerial fire. And later on, we understand that Shaoyang pertains to ministerial fire. So what are these fires? And at this point, I just want to also stop a second and say that if you have any questions, feel free to write them in the chat. I'll try to address them as we go on, and we'll leave some time in the end for questions. So emperor fire uses clear light. Ministerial fire uses position. Well, what is clear light? Clear light is the light that we receive from outside, from heaven. And who receives this light? The heart, which is our emperor. But this light cannot be used in a physiological way. It cannot warm our body. It cannot help us start a cooking process. So it can't really be used until this yang is positioned in a certain place. So the heart receives this light, this yang from above, and has to bring it down into us. So we have this movement of yang coming down into our body, facilitated by the yang ming conformation, which has a down and in movement. And only by pivoting this yang, using the Shaoyang pivoting function, we can place the fire down beneath the dantian. So the yang is coming from above and is received by the emperor, but the pivoting of this yang and positioning it as ministerial fire is done by the Shaoyang. So this is more of a narrow understanding of this pivoting function of the Shaoyang. Now, once the fire is received and positioned, the spleen can start its cooking process. So the spleen is in charge of distribution of fluids, and essentially without the cooking and without the fire, the spleen has cold water, but with the fire, the water becomes warm. And then the spleen can start to cook the water and start a steaming process that can go up and out to the lungs and the entire body. So this is basic physiology, basic classical physiology. It's a bit simplified, but just to get you an idea of what's the role of Shaoyang. So now that we have a very general idea of the Shaoyang physiology, let's discuss pathology. So the first pathology that we have is if the fire is not positioned in the correct place by the Shaoyang, then we will have flaring of ministerial fire, flaring up. The second problem that we might have is if the pivoting doesn't happen, then the conformations will not be moving in a correct order, or will not be moving in a coordinated way, and we'll have places where the chi will be stuck in different parts of the different conformations. So there'll be a stuck chi mechanism. And the last pathology which we have to consider is that the steaming process of the tie-in will fail because the tie-in will not receive a healthy ministerial fire to warm up the tie-in. So let's go and view a little bit more deeply each of these pathologies. So the first pathology we will have is flaring up of the ministerial fire. What does that mean, flaring up of the ministerial fire? Well, as you can see, we have the Shaoyang bringing the yang from above, and it's trying to pivot, but there's something causing the yang to become stuck. So the yang cannot totally pivot. And when this happens for a certain amount of time, there will be a heat starting to condense and stagnate, and this heat will turn into fire. And the first line of the Shaoyang chapter in Shan Halun, line 263, is actually describing this condition. It says, in disease of the lesser yang, there's bitter taste in the mouth, dry throat, and dizzy vision. Now, when we read these symptoms, although they do represent a Shaoyang pathology, they also are very general ideas, the general terms, the general ideas of what we should see in a Shaoyang pathology. Let's see what does it mean. So once there's stagnation in the Shaoyang and we see fire arising, this fire will have a tendency to rise and affect the upper part of the body. So first it will rise and affect the gallbladder. And as we all know, the gallbladder contains bile, which is used in order to facilitate a good digestion. It helps, the bile is bitter, and the bitter taste helps the yang ming to digest food and bring it down into the tayin. But once there's fire harassing the gallbladder, instead of going down, the bitter taste will go up. The bile will go up, and that will cause a bitter taste in the mouth. We will also see signs of fire at the throat and signs of fire at the eyes. I mean, the eyes and the throat will all be affected by heat. And we can explain it in one way by the fact that we know that the gallbladder channel passes the throat, and we know that the liver channel goes into the eyes, opens into the eyes. But these areas, apart from being areas where the channels cross, these are also what we consider as pivot areas. Areas which, as we mentioned, Liu Huang mentioned before, are opening and closing areas where things are open and closed, allow exiting and entering of yang and food. So when we have a Shaoyang pathology, we'll see that pivot areas are affected. Especially they're affected by heat and fire scorching those areas. So we'll see a dry throat and a dizzy vision, in the sense that the vision will be clouded. Now we could go to the next pathology, which is a stuck qi mechanism. So once the Shaoyang fails to pivot, we will see in different places in the body that the qi mechanism is stuck. The movement of the conformation will not be coordinated correctly. And to get an idea of this pathology, I think we can just read Shan Halun clause 96. This clause discusses the Xiao Chayu Tang pattern, which is the main Shaoyang pathology. And what I did is I just read line by line, and I marked on the body where we see the pathology, so we can get an idea how the different conformations are affected. So Shang Hang Zong Feng for 5 or 6 days, alternating chills and fever. So we can see that already it's affecting the exterior. The person will feel hot or cold and might have fever. If there's pain and fullness in the chest and ribs, the patient is untalkative with no desire for food or drink. So you see that it affects the chest area. It can affect the mind. The person can be depressed. He might not want to talk, or might not want to eat. It can affect the digestion. The whole transportation will be affected. It later on continues, vexation and nausea, or vexation in the chest with no vomiting. So you see, we can see now that it affects the heart, and it can affect the lungs, or pain in the abdomen, or hard glomus beneath the ribs, or palpitations below the heart. So it can affect, again, the heart, or the digestion, or the small intestine, and urination, which is not free or nor first, and a slight fever or cough. So you see, again, urination is affected. It can affect the bladder or the kidneys. So all the organs can be affected. And I wonder now, I'd like to hear if anybody has an idea, what pattern have you seen lately what disease that we have seen lately that resemble this multiple affliction in different parts of the body? Anybody has an idea? Feel free to, exactly, COVID. I haven't treated so many cases, but I treated about 5 cases in Israel, and out of them, I think every one of them had some kind of I'm talking about the beginning of COVID, not the later stages, but all of them had some kind of Xiao Chayu Tang presentation with some modification. So we can see that once the Qi mechanism is stuck, all organs are affected and all organs can become sick.